welcome to the Doin Motherhood Podcast, where we talk all things Black mothers today. All right, so what's the goings on, y'all? What is happening this week? Are we in the last week of July? We're in the last week of July, which means we're in the last month of summer. Our summer is winding down to an end. And right now, the Olympics is the talk of everything. And I don't know, I just feel like the Olympics can't get right this year. Like the Olympics is on can't get right status, even before the Olympics started. So we know, everyone knows Sha'Carri Richardson's story. And not that I feel like the Olympics, I won't say that the Olympics got it wrong with Sha'Carri, because Sha'Carri herself has acknowledged that she was wrong for testing positive for marijuana and all of that. But since Sha'Carri, because I know she's a hot topic and people have their feelings, and I have my feelings too. But Sha'Carri aside, we have seen the Olympics get it wrong a few times, especially in regards to Black women. So we had the issue with the swim caps where the Black female swimmers were told that they couldn't use, I guess, these special caps that they were using because it's not in regulation with the Olympic regulations, I guess. I don't know. And then there was also some questionable testing. They were women track runners from another country, but they were told that they could not compete because their testosterone levels were too high. And so, all of that. And then we come to yesterday. The huge news from yesterday was that Simone Biles has dropped out of the team competition for the gymnastics division, or the gymnastics competition, because of mental health problems. And so there's there's a whole story there, right? Simone, as we know, is the GOAT. Capitals, all caps, THE, the all caps, GOAT, right? Simone Biles is absolutely world GOAT champion of gymnastics, and has been for a number of years since she's been competing. And what we've seen happen in this year in the Olympics, there had been talk about some of the very difficult maneuvers that she pulls off. And not only are they difficult, but it is said that they can be dangerous, right? And that the Olympic Committee's concern is that these moves are too dangerous for most of the other competitors to attempt. And so because of that, they decided that they would not give Simone full points, for fear that if Simone receives full points for her performance, that would encourage the other competitors to try to meet the same standard that Simone is meeting, and that it may cause injury and it may be a problem. So that was the talk, at the beginning of when gymnastics started, and now Simone has pulled out. And I just have to say, would you want to continue to compete for something if you weren't given all the credit that you were due? And Simone has not said that that is the reason that she's pulled out. But what we did see happen is once she pulled out, the Olympic, or not the Olympic, but the USA Gymnastics team, I guess their spokespeople or their coaches, tried to cover it up really quickly and say that she suffered an injury, and, they were going to make an announcement about how soon she would be back, or if she would be back. And then Simone came out right behind the Olympic Committee, or right behind the USA Gymnastics statement, to confirm that she is not injured. She has not suffered any type of physical injury, but that it is her mental health that she is taking care of. She had a series of tweets kind of that, gave us an an indication that she's been feeling a lot of pressure and not feeling up to her best, I guess you can say. One of her tweets, she actually said she felt like she was carrying the world on her shoulders. And so, it's just such an interesting, it's such an interesting time to see Black women, and especially very young Black women. We're looking, Simone, the most recent case, but also Naomi Osaka weeks ago, who had tried to stand up for herself in not taking part in the press coverage during the French Open. And she was told that she would be fined. And she said, that's okay. That's fine. I'll pay the fine. And then the French Open officials doubled down on her and started to tack on more punishments because she refused to participate in the press coverage, at which point Naomi decided to pull out of the French Open. And she has since also not played at Wimbledon. And, we have yet to know when she plans to return. But I say it's a very interesting time to see young Black women taking a stand for their own mental health, for their own, their mental health, their physical health, and really just standing up and saying that, we don't have to do this. This is not the most important thing in my life right now. And the most important thing in their life, or what we could probably assume or presume from these steps that they have taken, is that they realize that nothing goes without them feeling at 100% their best, whatever it takes for them to each be at 100% their best. And I just think it's a great message to send out. This is a topic that I actually want to cover in a much deeper, I want to have a deeper conversation with this. So I'm going to put this conversation on pause for now, but we are absolutely coming back to where Black women are politically, where we are career-wise, and what we're seeing Black women as a collective start to take stands on. What's important to us as far as our own health and safety, what's important to us as far as taking care of our children and families, and how we see ourselves continuing to move throughout not only the United States, but throughout the world. So needless to say, I am proud. I am proud. Would have loved to see Simone compete in that competition, but we have to take care of us, bottom line. And whatever else is going on, I just think that, especially when we see that someone's talent is not being honored in the way that they give it and the way that they have always given it. Simone has shown up and given beyond 100% every single time. And so I can only imagine that has to be like a real doozy to get to this huge world stage and then be told that you're too good, so we're going to penalize you for all of the good that you do. I don't blame her. I'm glad that she has taken the stance that she has taken. On to other things. So I just returned from New York City. I just returned from New York City, hanging out with my boys. My son, Bryce is the soccer player. Johari is the attorney. Johari's the oldest, obviously. Bryce just turned 18. So that's why we went to New York. He goes to New York every summer to spend time with his dad and his family that's there. So he was already in New York, and I and Johari traveled to spend the weekend with him. So let me tell you what I learned this weekend. I learned my age. Because I'm 40 and I still like to think I'm real cute and quick and young. And I learned my age real quick this past weekend trying to hang with these youngsters. So the first day was really exciting because Bryce I haven't spent a lot of time with Bryce in New York, aside from when we lived there when he was little. But now he goes to visit his dad. And usually when I go, I'm there visiting with my friends and we're doing separate things. So this was the first time that I really got to see New York City through Bryce's eyes. New York is the first city that I fell in love with. I absolutely love that city. And I guess if I could break it down to one thing, I love that the entire world fits inside that tiny little landmass. You know, New York is only yay big, right? Their attitude is humongous, but their landmass is small. All of New York City fits inside Houston. So, you know, just to put that into perspective. But yeah, so my favorite thing about New York is that you really do get to experience the entire world in that one city. And I like to see how other people enjoy the city. I like to see what people are attracted to and, you know, the ways that they enjoy that city. And so Bryce took me around to some of his favorite spots and we spent an entire day walking, which when I lived there, you're used to that. Like you get used to the always walking, you get used to catching public transportation. There's I have a different beat to my walk when I get to New York. And so you're usually like hitting the ground and moving really fast. And that's what we did. I had a bit of a hard time keeping up. I couldn't do my thing like I normally would do my thing, but we had a wonderful time. This was the first time. So we lived there for 4 years. And this was the first time that I walked the Brooklyn Bridge with Bryce. So we had a really good time. And then Jahari joined us. Jahari joined us on my second day in the city, and we had a blast. We had a really good time with each other. And what Bryce wanted to do for his birthday was Bryce wanted to take one of the helicopter tours. So we got to do that. We got to like fly right next to the Statue of Liberty and the Freedom Tower, or not right next to the Freedom Tower, but the main sites, the Brooklyn Bridge, Roosevelt Island, Governor's Island, all those amazing things. It was just a really good time. It was all three of our first time in a helicopter. So I'll be sure to share some of the photos from our vacation and a few videos from being in the helicopter. But it was really good for me that the three of us were together, not at home, just to have fun, you know? And so I'm going to try not to get really emotional. I get, y'all know I talk tough about being an empty nester. And, once this kid is gone, like all the things that I plan to do with my life. But I think one of, now that I've been home for a couple of days and after having spent, just a really good amount of time with them, I realize how much I miss the three of us being together all of the time. And, and I just think about what that's going to be like when Bryce is away and we're all in three different places, and, what that's going to look like for times that we get together and how frequently will that happen. And so that's what I've been reflecting on now that I've been home and resting these bones, these old bones. They're not old all the way, these middle-aged bones. They still fly though, so that's all that matters. And finally, the last part of what's going on. So I want to just talk a little bit about the changes that you have likely noticed. Those of you who have been rocking with me since Intercultured Podcast, you've certainly probably realized that there's a lot more happening on the podcast, right? So if you're listening strictly on audio, you hear the difference in the music, and you might hear some other production things going on inside the episode. And for those of you who are paying attention to my Instagram page, you've noticed that I post videos now. And so now the podcast is being recorded by video. And that is all possible because I am working with the Creators Guild. The Creators Guild is a Houston podcast collective that is creating content for the culture. And I'm really happy to have found them, really happy to be joining them. It's not official yet. It was supposed to be official. I have a bone to pick with the main producer, but we'll talk to him later. But no, it's not official yet, but I have definitely come to find this studio to be my podcast home. I'm thinking of it as my podcast home now. And I really enjoy working with the producers who have been so helpful and help, not only in producing the show, but also helpful in some of the creative aspects of the show. And so I wanted to just make sure that I gave note to that, and so that you understand where that's coming from. And so just know that soon you're going to be seeing like a lot more things, not only from my podcast, but you'll see me sharing from some of the other podcasts that are within the collective. And so hopefully on the next show, I'll give an introduction to some of those podcasts that I think that you all would also be interested in listening to. So that is what's going on in my world. Before we get into our main topic today, I'm going to do it. I'm going to plug it. I'm going to tell you, I need you to go to the show, listen, share, leave a review, please. If you are enjoying the show, I'd love to hear it. If there are some things that you think, we could use some help with, you can leave that there as well. Don't tank my stars though. Now give me the stars. But in all seriousness, I appreciate those of you who are still here and listening with me. And I thank those of you who are sharing the podcast. I see every week the numbers going up, and I can't tell you enough how grateful I am that you're here. So our main segment today is a little controversial. It has the tendency to be controversial. Now, I don't particularly think that this should be a controversial topic, but I know that whenever we get into these parenting topics, like there's always something that can turn into a mommy war, right? We have mommy wars, everything. Mommy wars about breastfeeding or bottle feeding. Mommy wars about how you let your baby sleep. Mommy wars about moms who go to work and moms who stay at home with their children, right? And so I think that this is one of those topics that has the tendency, and this one I think even comes out of the mommy war space and can just be an overall like parent war back and forth over this topic. So my time with my sons this past weekend has inspired this topic. And it is, I'm not one of their little friends, or am I? So in Black households, we always have those jokes about like mama sayings, right? Black mama saying. What are some favorite Black mama sayings? And usually some of the first ones you'll hear, like, we got McDonald's at home. Or do you have McDonald's money, right? And one of the other ones is that one of the other really popular answers that you'll hear is some rendition of, I'm not one of your little friends, or don't mistake me for one of your little friends, right? And so in the time that I spent with my boys this weekend, we used to live in New York City. And when I lived in New York City, the boys were young. My oldest was 12 when we left New York. And my youngest had just turned 4 when we left New York. And so it made me think about all the time and, the fun things and the adventures that we used to get into when we lived there. But not only that, just the fact that we have always enjoyed hanging out with one another and spending this time with one another. And a lot of I won't say a lot of my friends, because my friends know how my children and I, get along with one another. But acquaintances, people who may not have known us for a very long time, are always shocked to hear that my boys hang out with me, or that, to see that they want to hang out with me. And I always think that that's interesting, that people don't view their children as friends. And so I want to just open that up a little bit, right? I want to open up just a different perspective about what it looks like to be quote unquote friends with your children. Now, I'm not talking about being like BFF, right? Like, I'm not hanging out with them people in the club. Like, that's not going to happen, right? We're not sitting around drinking together. We're not sitting around, like, none of that. But I've always had a problem myself. Again, this is my own perspective, and I'm only sharing my perspective. But I've always had a problem with the idea that I should not view my children as friends, or that they should not see me as a friend. And I'll talk about why here. So we have this, and I'll say, when I say in Black homes, I'm speaking specifically to African-American Black homes, because that is my cultural background, and those are the families I grew up among the most, right? And so that's the culture that I understand the most. And so I'm speaking from that perspective. I do not mean to X anyone else out of that. If you feel like you're a part of this conversation, then you could be a part of this conversation. But I'm only speaking from what I know, what I've lived. And from that perspective. And so, we have this it's a very spoken rule, right? It's not even an unspoken rule. It is a rule that we hear parents say all the time in Black households, like, I'm not your friend. You're not my friend. I'm not trying to be your friend. You must think I'm one of your friends. You got me messed up if you think I'm one of your friends, right? And some way or another, we let our children know, right? That's how we delineate places, right? That I am the parent, I am the authority figure, I am the person who has control of whether it's the household, control of decision making, control of all things. That is who the parent is. And that the child's role is to be in deference to that parental role. And so when I talk about my relationship with my children, it's not, those lines are not as drawn in the sand, right? I like to believe that there is space, and what I've tried to do in their growing up is offer space for those lines to be a little more fluid. Now, that's not to say that I am not an authority figure. I am absolutely an authority figure. I'm the head of my household. My children know, they know what time it is. I'll just say that, right? Like, they know what time it is, and they know, they've always known that, that there is a certain respect to be held, right? For me, they've also always understood that they're not lone decision makers, where I do share in the decision making with them, right? I might share some of that power, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about power dynamics when we're talking about parenting, the parent-child relationship. We're really discussing how much power and autonomy people have over one another. And so, and usually it's parent to child, right? The amount of power. And so my children know that where I will share in some of that decision-making power with them, and that there's a certain amount of autonomy that they are, that I respect. I'll say that. I don't believe that I give them autonomy. They are human beings, right? They are separate human beings from myself. And so like autonomy is not something for me to give them, but they realize that with that autonomy, that there are still some checks and balances that have to play out. And so I want to talk about what it looks like when we allow those lines to be a little more soft or fluid, or maybe even like erasable. You know, if we're drawing lines in the sand, we can cover up part of that line. And if you have to put it back, you can put it back in the sand, right? But yeah, so I want to talk about that. First, before I get into that, I just want to say, I think that there is definitely a way to be both an effective parent and be able to share friendship with your child. I don't see this relationship, I don't see this dynamic as you're either a friend or you're not a friend, right? And if you're being a friend to your child, that this is like a relationship of ruin and children who are gonna, I don't know, I see people run with so much. I was reading, as I was getting ready for this conversation, I was reading what, a lot of the experts say. And the experts will have you believe that if you are your child's friend, that you're probably telling them, you're like burdening them with all of your problems and burdening them with, with things that are not age appropriate for them to have to consider. What are some of the, also this idea that like, if you're a friend to your child, that means there are no rules in place and that everything is just kind of, like going off of a whim. And so I want to debunk some of that as a parent who sees herself as a friend to her children. First, I want to just kind of go over some definitions. So all of these definitions come from Merriam-Webster. And so the first definition of a parent, we have two entries for Merriam-Webster. One is that one definition of a parent is one that begets or brings forth offspring. That's pretty, right? Like, you give birth to children, you are the co-parent, or right, the co-maker of these children, you are then the parent. They also have the definition, a person who brings up and cares for another. So that would be in the case of like adoptive parents or foster parents or any other version of someone that is not the people who like beget these children to get them here. But someone else is taking care of these children in some sort of authoritative manner. So that's what we have for parents. Then when we have, those are the nouns. And then as a verb, to be or act as a parent. To be or act as a parent. And that's obviously, right? Like, I parented my children into adulthood, right? You parent your children the way you see fit, right? So that's those definitions from that. And then I want to go over definition of friend. And there's so many definitions for friend, I didn't realize. So here are a few. One attached to another by affection or esteem. And I like that. Being attached to another by affection or esteem. Another one is one that is not hostile. And that was that was interesting to me, because I was like, so anybody that is hostile to you would not be a friend, right? I don't really like defining words with telling us what something is not, but this is the dictionary, so I assume that this is okay. And then finally, one that is of the same nation, party, or group. One that favors or promotes something, such as a charity, right? And then finally, a favored companion. And so when we look at the definitions, I think of all of those, my favorite one is one attached to another by affection or esteem. And so when I hear that definition, that one, and what's the other one? One that is of the same nation, party, or group. To me, I don't understand not seeing my children as my friend, or them not see, or vice versa, right? Them not seeing me as a friend, when the definition of a friend is one attached to another by affection or esteem. Now, if you've been hanging around on my podcast long enough, you know I have all the affection for those two boys, right? And I am deeply invested in their esteem, right? So, to me, it's like a no-brainer. Like, of course, that's how I feel about my children. If that's how I feel about my children, then in some way, shape, or form, we are friends. Also, one that is of the same nation, party, or group, right? So we're in a family unit together. We are all together. And in that, we also share lots of different things, right? We share cultural values, we share family values, we have a shared sense of values, and we have a shared sense of togetherness that allows us to all get along within our family unit, within that group space. And so just by definition alone, I counter objection to the notion that I should not be friends with my children. I understand why people feel like that is not a thing, but if we're just like literally looking at language, and y'all know I like to tell people words mean things, and here we are with the meanings to words and what they mean, right? So now I want to look at the framework of how I was guided as a parent. And I'll tell you now, I'm not one, I was quite young. You all know the story. I was very young when I had Jahari. So at that time, the idea of like turning to experts and turning to books to decide how I should be raising these children, it just wasn't. I was still being parented myself, right? At the time that I became a parent to Jahari. And so I said that to say, I don't have the frameworks that you may be used to hearing in terms of academics, right? In the academic study of parenthood. What I have is a framework of what I call intuitive parenting, because that is what I relied a lot on. Common sense parenting. And I know that might get a little tricky, because what is common sense? But when I say common sense parenting, what I mean is in relation to what your world looks like around you. What resources do you have access to, whether those resources are money, food, or other people who can help you in your parenting of your children? I also mean common sense parenting in the sense of being aware socially of what's happening in your world. And so I grew up in a household, and there were things that I thought my parents did an excellent job at, and there were things that I thought my parents did a really poor job at, right? And so then taking my common sense of those happenings and applying it to my household, whether that was to say, I think my parents did a great job with X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to employ that same technique or those, the same ideology in my own home. Or if that means, no, that's definitely not happening in my household, right? I will definitely not handle my children in that way. So that's what I mean by common sense parenting. And then also just like, again, what's happening socially around you. So like, what makes sense culturally for you? What makes sense culturally, maybe your family culture and structure, but then also what does that look like where you live in regards to where you live, right? So what does that look like in your neighborhood? What does that look like in your church? What does that look like in the schools that your children may attend, right? So all of that is what I'm talking about. And so And then lastly, that cultural context, right? The cultural, like I said, I was raised by people who were born and raised in the American South, and they are Black members or African American members of society in the American South. And so we have a lot of Southern culture that is relevant to our household, and not just my household and my parents' households, but what it was like to go to my aunts and uncles and family and really close family friends, that all of that looks similar. Everybody's not doing the exact same thing, but all of that looks similar. So this is the framework that I'm speaking from. Now, a lot of this will probably sound like, I know there's conversations out there about attachment parenting, like there's secure attachment parenting. And I know there's conversations about helicopter parents and free range parenting, which I believe if I had to choose, one of your academic frameworks for parenting, I certainly am in the free range parent. That's where I hang out. I can tell you who I'm not. I'm definitely not helicopter mom or tiger mom. It's just not my steez. I don't get down like that. But, for other people's households, again, depending on how they were raised, what makes sense from a cultural aspect, what makes sense for what they believe within that household, that makes complete sense. And I don't feel one way about it or another for other people. I just don't want to be imposed upon. So anyway, here's my context for why I see parenthood as also a friendship and how it can be a friendship. And I think about, I just like to reverse course and think about, okay, so if I'm clear that my friend group are my peers, people of my age, people that I share space, whether that's in school or at work, if I am considering these people my friends, then what is it that makes us friends? What is important to me? What are the values that I seek from other people who intend to fill that role for me? And so I have a few of those things. First is kindness. That seems hard to come by sometimes these days, especially this pandemic era. I don't know, I'm about to get off topic for a second, but I don't know about y'all, but I just feel like everybody has lost their kindness ever since we've come back outside. People are having a hard time understanding and remembering to, put their kindness in their pocket before they leave their homes. But so kindness is especially important to me. And what do I mean by kindness? By kindness, I mean that we are sharing with one another in ways that are friendly, in ways that that make people want to come back again, right? So we speak to each other in certain tones, right? Those tones are tones of friendship and usually happiness. And even when it's not in happiness, because there are times that I am upset with my friends or my friends may be upset with me, right? That happens. We're all humans. Life is life and things happen. But even in those moments of discord or in those moments that, I'm not feeling, how when kids are little and they're like, they get upset with you and they're, I'm not your friend today, right? So, you are not my friend, mommy. That's what Bryce used to tell me. You are not my friend. Okay. But even in those moments when we're talking with our peer groups, we still manage to be kind in our communication with them, right? We still manage to be kind in our dealings with our friends. And so I'll give the example of you have friends over and, maybe you're having a party and it's a great time and someone knocks over your very expensive vase and you really can't believe that vase hit the floor, right? And you are really upset with that person who knocked over your vase, right? And in my mind, it's like, people don't know how to act. Nobody taught you how to go anywhere, right? But I don't approach my friend with that. I don't approach my friend in an angry tone and start going off on them about this broken vase. But sometimes there are some of us parents who, if it were our child who knocked over the vase, in that very split second would be reaming down our children's throats about why and how and not paying attention and you're clumsy, right? And we start calling names and all kinds of things like that. And so my thought is that if I wouldn't do it to another human being, if I wouldn't do it to a person that society deems as a proper friend, then why would I treat my child any differently? And especially if my role as a parent is to emulate and guide my children to become the kind of people that I would like to see them be in society, right? Then I need to be that person, and not only be that person to other people, but I absolutely need to be that person to them. I have to treat them with kindness if I expect them to be people who are going to grow up and treat others with kindness. And I especially expect that if I expect them to be kind to me, that I need to definitely be kind in how I deal and talk with them. Now, that's not to say that I haven't, because I have. Okay? It has happened. Bryce is my child who breaks all the things. He's always been that way. He's just, I don't know, a feeble-handed or something. I don't know what that is. But so we've had our moments. But the point is, my children, for the most part, know and have seen and have experienced me as their mother treating them with the same amount of kindness that I would treat any other individual, and especially someone that I consider a friend. My second thing for my friends, I expect my friends to show up. I expect them to be there. I ran a marathon. They were there. And if they weren't there, we're probably not friends. Right? I expect them to show up to the big, important things in my life. I expect them to show up if I'm going through a tough time. I expect that we will see each other with some form of regularity, right? That we will see each other or communicate with each other in one of the hundreds of different ways that we have to communicate with one another. But my friends know that I will show up for them. If they need me, they call me, I show up. If they're having an important life event, I show up. If they're having a hard time with whatever, I show up. And so my children receive the same. I show up for them. I'm at the events, right? I am soccer mom extraordinaire. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that right now. I'm the chauffeur. I'm the team mom. I'm the cheerleader. I'm like all of the things, right? But Bryce has always been assured that his mother is going to be the person that he sees there every single time, right? I'm going to get him to where he needs to be. He's going to have the things that he needs to have, and he's going to see my face on that sideline. And even if I'm not, like now he travels for soccer. And so even if my face is not on that sideline, I'm the one dropping him off. I'm the one picking him up. I'm the one in communication throughout the time that he's gone, right? I show up for my children the same way that I would show up for my friends. And again, if parenthood is, in the way that I view it, is that it's not about me dictating these children's lives. That to me is not my role as their parent. I believe children come to this earth with their own soul contract with their source, right? Whatever your source may be, we have our source. I believe that source and that child, those children had communications way before I was in the picture. They know what they're on this earth to do. My job is to guide, and my job is to ensure that they have the range of possibilities, right? And the opportunities that allows them, whoever they're supposed to be when they come to this earth, that allows that to flourish, right? My job is to nurture that, but my job is not to dictate. And so when I was saying, with that being my framework, I don't believe it's my job to dictate their life, but it is my job to be there. And it is my job to make sure that they have what they need to be productive in whatever it is that they do, right? So that they can be successful, so that they can build confidence and feel confident, so that by the time they are adults, right, hopefully they are well-adjusted young people. That's what I hope for, right? And so I show up for my children. I show up for my children the same way I show up for my friends. Playing together is that's something that's important to us, right? And so, we all grew up as children. You play with your friends, and then we become older and it's not so much playing anymore, right? But we hang out, we spend our time together. We do things that are fun together. We go to certain events together, like concerts and I don't know, what do people do for fun? What do y'all do for fun? Like, these are the things. We go to concerts, we go to museums, we go to whatever your thing is. But that's just as important for parents to do that with children. I remember there was a time when I was younger and my parents, we'd want to play with our parents. And my parents would tell us, that's what you have a brother for. That's what you have a sister for. Go play with them. I'm not here to play with you, right? And that was something that always, so my parents played with us. They did. We had a good time. But my point being that is also important for parents to do with their children. And if we are sharing that space and time with one another, right, that it's the same thing. That's what we did this weekend, right? Bryce took me all over Brooklyn and downtown Manhattan to show me the places that he goes when he's having a good time with friends or even with himself, right? But I got to see where he plays. And then we did things together. The three of us, we played together this weekend, right? Or back up a few months ago, Jahari came home to visit for the weekend. And as soon as he touched down, he wanted us to all go rent the scooters. They have those scooter rentals downtown. And so we all went and I didn't want to get on a scooter. That is not how I envisioned spending whatever day of the week that was that they had me out there in downtown Houston, right? On this scooter, riding around town with them. It's not something I would have done on my own. It's not something that I just, was sitting around like, I wish I could ride a scooter. But when these boys come and want me to do that with them, that is what I will do, right? And so in that, we're sharing friendship. And then finally, and this is probably where I think most people find this to be a controversial topic. I really don't think that it has to be a controversial topic, but in shared values and decision making. And I know that when I was younger, and I didn't really have the language to express to the older adults around me, right? My elders, whether it was my parents or my in-laws or aunts and uncles or grandparents, but a lot of my family members had a problem with the idea that I allowed Jahari, because Bryce wasn't around at this time, but that I allowed Jahari to, as young as 4 and 5 years old, to pick out his own clothing, and that I allowed him to choose the food he wanted to eat at restaurants. And let me tell you, this sounded crazy to me then, and it sounds even more insane to me now, that people don't believe that a child of a certain age, 4 or 5 years old, can do that. Or that, and it's not even that they can, because they know that the child can do it, right? It's not a matter of can do it, but they feel that a child should not have that much autonomy of self. And I was just in a space where I decided there are certain arguments I'm not willing to have with children, right? There are certain arguments I'm not willing to have with anyone. And so the same way that I would never dare go to a restaurant and make the decisions for whatever friends are around the table with me, or that that I would think that I know better what someone should wear than they would know for themselves, or what makes them feel like themselves, right? Or what makes them feel confident when they walk out of the door. The same way I would never think to do that for an adult who is my friend, I did not see a problem with that being a decision that a 4 or 5-year-old can make. I mean, we're talking clothes. We're talking clothes. I'm going to tell a little story. I had a friend, I had an old friend who, our Bryce and her son were the same age. And I was taking them to an event at the Houston Dynamo. Were having like a family day or something like that, right? So we're headed out to the family day. I'm going to pick her son up because she has to go to work. And they come flying out of, Bryce and I were in the car having a good old time. And they come flying out of the house, angry faces, things are being slung and walking all fast. And I'm like, yo, that's a lot of energy. First of all, it's early in the morning. That's number one. Number two, this is supposed to be a happy day event. So what's all this angry energy coming to my car for? And then when they get to the car, they'd had this huge argument. My friend and her, I think at the time they were like 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10 years old, over a pair of socks. A pair of socks. The child wanted to wear his long, tall, white socks. She wanted him to wear the black socks that are hidden in the shoe because she felt like that looked better with the outfit that she had chosen for him that day, right? But for whatever reason, little dude wanted to wear the socks that he had planned on wearing. Now, in my mind, I'm imagining he wanted the tall socks because we're headed to a soccer event and soccer players wear tall socks, right? This is how I'm seeing this. Like, I'm figuring out how this little person worked this out in his mind, and his mother couldn't let it go. And so when they got to the car and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, he wants to look stupid in these socks. And I'm like, yo, first of all, he's not even going to be with you all day today. So if you're worried about other people looking at your child like he's stupid, he's with me. Also, it's too early in the morning to be fighting about socks for a kid going to a soccer event. Like, what are we doing? And so when I come back to, let me bring it back. When I come back to the shared decision making, this is what I mean. That I fully believe children should have some autonomy, right? Now, can my child, like at 4 or 5 years old, could they decide that they're going to the concert with, so-and-so? No, absolutely not. Age appropriate and what's appropriate for the moment, right? But again, when I'm seeing that these are the ways I see friends, and if I'm treating adult people in this framework, I personally don't understand not sharing myself in the same way with my children. Now, did I ever say my children are my friends? No. I did not make that, like I wasn't like around the house saying, hey friend, It was not that kind of relationship. I am mom, right? They understand that I am mom. They understand that they have to get permission for certain things. They understand that that I am going to make the final decision if there's discord, right, in what's going on. They understand, again, going back to deference, they know we understand place. We understand who is head of household, who is the authority, and what needs to happen to make this household a functional household, right? All of that is in place. But I will say this. There are two moments that I think I can mark as my two favorite moments, being parent, mother to Jahari Burnett, that's my oldest one, and Bryce Willoughby. And the first was with Jahari. We were actually out with a group of my friends. We're at this, at brunch. And there was a big group of people. So there's, when there's a long table, there's conversations happening all over the place. And I was in a conversation focused this way. And Jahari said something that caught my attention. And so then I eavesdropped on over here. What he talking about, right? So I eavesdropped over into his conversation, and what I heard him telling, someone was surprised that he had a tattoo. At this point, he was an undergrad in college. Someone was surprised that he had a tattoo, and then he told them that he got the tattoo when he was in high school and that I allowed him to do it. And they were like, and then it's like, oh my God, my mother would have went crazy if I, blah, 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 all of the things, right? And I get it. I'm also not willing to fight about tattoos, not with like a 17-year-old. Why? Because they're going to turn around and do it anyway. That's what I did. But what I heard Jahari say to my friends, he said, but that's what I've always loved about my mom, is that she's always allowed us to be who we are, and we respect her because she's allowed us to be who we are. And up until that point, I really did not think that they thought of it that way. I think I maybe kind of just thought that they thought they could do, that they have a cool mom. They have the cool mom that lets them do things that most of their friends' parents won't allow them to do, right? But what he saw is exactly what I said earlier. I see him as a human being who is on this earth with his own agenda. Him and his source have the conversation about who he's to be and what he's to do here, right? And he recognizes that I see and respect him as that autonomous individual. And so he called me his friend that day. And I was like, well, check me out. Okay, right? And then from Bryce, there was a time we were going to Houston Dynamo game. We were season ticket holders for Houston Dynamo for a few seasons in a row. And I think this is when Bryce first got Instagram, and he posted a picture of the two of us together. And this is when the kid, like, everything was squad. Like, they'd be with their friend. You'd like be in the mall and you just hear squad, squad. And you'd be like, all right, y'all, we see you together. We know you're friends, right? Squad. And so, Bryce posted a photo of the two of us together, and he hashtag squad. And like, that was the only thing. There was no caption, no nothing. It was just hashtag squad. And that really, really warmed my heart. And then a couple of years, or maybe a few years later, for Christmas, he had written me it is the sweetest note. I wish I would have pulled that note out. I might share it on the Instagram page if he allows me. Bryce is very private, and he does not like for me to share. He does not like for me to share his business. But in the letter, he was just thanking me for being the mom that I am to them. And he expressed that both he and Jahari feel that I am their best friend. And so to wrap it up, again, I never started my parenting journey with these two with a goal of being their friend, right? This isn't a matter of like me trying to be the hip, cool mom, trying to fit in with them and their friends. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being able to view children and see them as people separate from ourselves. And when you see your children as a person separate from yourself, then you understand that there is a respect, right? This is a two-way relationship. It's not a top-down relationship. At least that's not how I see it. It's not a top-down relationship. It's not for me to dictate their life to them. It was never for me to, be this huge authoritarian in their life. But instead, through guiding and nurturing and messing up, that's the other thing. There's no right or wrong to this. I tell my clients this all the time as they're starting on their parenting journeys. There's no right or wrong to parenting. There isn't. I mean, I know we have experts, and I know that y'all love to be in those books, but your baby didn't read the expert's book. So your baby is going to do whatever your baby does, right? Your toddler is going to do whatever your toddler does. Your fifth grader is going to do whatever your fifth grader does. They're not stuck to the narrative of whatever expert you think is the best in this parenting journey. And so I just realized very early on in my parenting journey that if I see these young people as a separate being from myself, they are not me. They're not even an extension of me. Maybe. But that's a little too deep for this conversation. But the point being that if I am going to treat one group of friends, right? The socially acceptable peer group that are known as my friends, if I'm going to treat them a certain way, then that same amount of respect, if not more, should also be bestowed upon my children. And if not for any other reason, that I am showing them the type of person that I would like to see them be in society. And example is our best teacher, I think. So anyway, that's me. That's me being friends with my kids. And I'm curious to know how you feel about that. What do you think about that? Are you a parent who is, open to that role of being a friend with your children? Or are you a parent who, needs a very clear line drawn to say, no, we are not friends. I am this person. You are that person. This is my place as the parent. This is your place as the child. I want to hear all about it. So let's go over to the IG page at Doin_Motherhood_podcast and have a conversation about it. And look at my pictures of my children, y'all, because I think they're so handsome. So join us on the IG page. I want to have that. I want to hear from you. Also, one more time, if you would please, go to wherever you listen to your podcast. This podcast is available on all podcast platforms. But when you get there, if you will like and leave a review, leave some stars, and be sure to share it with others that you think are interested in everything we're talking about, Black mothers today. Until next time, I'll check you later.